The Chilcot inquiry should allow us as a nation to learn from our mistakes, and I do recognise that the majority of public opinion was against the intervention in Iraq. A recent YouGov poll, 68% of people would like to see the inquiry report as soon as possible. In closing, can I repeat our support in these benches for the Government motion? We will support the motion at decision time and believe it is right that the inquiry's findings are published as soon as possible. However, I also repeat my earlier warning that this must not be used in general election campaigning. It would be disrespectful to the dead, the injured.
Order.
It would be disrespectful to the dead, the injured, their families and the Iraqi people. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now calling Keith Brown to wind up the debate on behalf of the Government. 8 minutes, please, Mr Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I suppose the last remarks really lead us back to the point of why is this debate important. The First Minister said when she spoke that this is a very grave subject, and indeed it is. But some of the reasons why it's important are, first of all, because there is nothing wrong with holding elected representatives to account. That's part of the democratic process. Democratic responsibility is extremely important, and disdain for democratic accountability, I think, is wrong. This is the third general election that will take place since the Iraq War happened. The third general election. In a democracy, the ability of citizens to have faith in and scrutinise the processes and decisions of the government is extremely important. It's also important because the Chilcot inquiry has become a very central element in the public's ability to know the truth of what happened at that time. It's also important that we should have a fearless investigation, and it should not be hamstrung in seeking to protect very powerful people. There's an old saying in the legal profession, I understand, that says, "Let justice be done though the heavens fall." And I would say that we should let justice be seen to be done though the heavens fall, or even reputations of some individuals may fall. And it's important, most of all, Labour seem to have forgotten this, whether it's talking about, during this debate, the NHS, educational psychologists, various other things, anything but the subject in front of us. It's important to remember the 179 souls who died during that conflict, serving their country from this country, as well as the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who died as well. They should remain in our minds. Of course, it's perfectly legitimate we should discuss an issue like this. And those people and their families are entitled to ask why they were asked to do what they were asked to do. We know that they weren't told at the time. It was weapons of mass destruction that were only 45 minutes away from the UK. That was the case that was made in a dossier that itself can best be described as a weapon of mass deception. The old saw that for service personnel, ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do and die. That cannot be the limit of the service personnel's human rights. They have obviously explicitly forsworn the right to object to, refuse to do what they are asked to do in a democracy. They do as an elected government asks them to do, even if they think their political masters are stupid or venal or naive. They have to do what they are asked to do. But they, more than anybody else, surely have a right to know the arguments, the processes, the reasons and even the deals that were done before they were sent to put their lives in danger. And one thing that's occurred to me thinking about this over the years is I try to imagine how service personnel would have felt, having been told that Saddam had these weapons of mass destruction, having seen friends die in the pursuit of that conflict, having seen comrades being disabled by their injuries. How did they feel? What would be more horrifying to them was to find the weapons of mass destruction, or to find out there were no weapons of mass destruction, having seen the carnage which had preceded that point. The idea there were weapons of mass destruction, we now found out, was a false prospectus. The idea, always preposterous. There were 45 minutes from being a threat to the UK, increasingly preposterous. Everybody realised that at the time. Our service personnel, though, to come back to them, they're individuals. They're very often characterised, as was done disgracefully during the debate in the referendum last year by people like Ian Lang. They're not all of the same mind. They're individuals. They have different views on things. But they, I think, would be of one mind in saying that they want to know why they were given one reason for for being asked to put themselves in harm's way, i.e. weapons of mass disruption, and then after many of them had died, being given another reason. Regime change was the excuse, the fig leaf that was used after the war to try and justify some of the actions of people. And I hope that is a fig leaf that Chilcot will remove when eventually it reports. And who wants these answers? Why do we discuss these issues? Well, we've heard from some of the contributions from others. Rose Gentle wants these answers. Is that wrong? You know, should she be waiting to have another debate on the health service or an educational psychologist? Does she not have a right to have her views represented in this place as well? The family of Alan Douglas, they want to have answers, as Kevin Stewart went as well. The deafening silence of 179 deceased souls, they want to have answers as well. And why shouldn't they have answers? And why should they wait for a longer period than the entire Second World War to have those answers? We heard from Kenny McCaskill about the alacrity with which the Nuremberg trials were carried out because of the gravity of what had happened, and also because the need to try and get to the truth of these things very soon after they've happened is huge. And yet, I heard somebody saying in a self-congratulatory tone on the Labour benches, Labour called for this inquiry. 6 years after the war had taken place. 3 or 4 times, I think, as Willie Rennie said, after they've had a chance to vote for it and refused to vote for it. It took that long. How much information was lost at that time? How many personal testimonies could no longer be found because of that delay? I'll give way to Alex Ferguson.
Alex Ferguson.
Thank you. I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary, I beg his pardon, who I believe is a very reasonable person, would accept that there is a need, and these people will be better served if there is total integrity behind the report when published, just as those victims of hepatitis C will require total integrity. And that total integrity can only be achieved if the due processes are seen to have been done and not have a false publication date placed on them by the politicians.
Can I first of all deprecate the analogy that Alex Ferguson has used, the hepatitis B investigation with this investigation? I don't think the two stand comparison. But the point that we're trying to make is, of course it's got to be done in the correct way. Everybody understands that. The point is, why has it taken 6 years for it to happen? Why did Chilcot say in 2011, at the start of 2011, this will be done in a few months? That is the important point. It's been delayed unreasonably. In fact, your own colleague in the House of Commons today, David Davis, has pointed the finger expressly at Whitehall. In fact, I think Jack Straw, maybe you're wrong, I think Jack Straw said the same thing as well. So they're saying there is something going on which is delaying this process, other than the Maxwellisation process that we've heard about. So something is delaying this, and it's a scandal. And what I'd like to have seen, to be honest, from Alex Ferguson, is some higher priority attached to the needs of those that either have people that have died and their families, or those that have been injured, well, than some of the things about process. I think it's far more important that some urgency should have been shown in the UK Government's handling of this. And that's not happened, and that's unfortunate. In closing, I believe it's very important for this Chamber and for the Scottish Government to note the huge and sometimes the ultimate sacrifice that our armed forces give in the preservation of our safety and security. And whatever the rights and wrongs of individuals, there is absolutely no doubt that our service personnel, as the First Minister said, and their families deserve our complete support. I should just say, though, that we betray rather than serve the interests of those if we try to sweep this under the carpet or endlessly avoid debating it, as has been suggested by some others. In this instance, the support that we should provide must include providing those who returned and the families of those who did not with the answers that they deserve, and we must do so without further delay. And for those reasons, I am proud to support the motion in the First Minister's name.
Many thanks. And that concludes the debate on the Chilcot inquiry.
A 10-minute rule debate is that moment on a Tuesday or a Wednesday when